ladies and gentlemen. We are back. We are live. It is the Freight Coach Podcast, the top podcast in transportation, coming to you guys every single weekday, 8:30 a.m. Pacific, 10:30 Central, to break down some industry headlines. But most importantly, you guys provide some actual insight into what you can do with all of this information. If this is your first time tuning in, welcome. This is the real side of freight, ladies and gentlemen. And I do say that before every single show. And what I mean by that is I only speak with transportation professionals, because at the end of the day, I want to talk to the right individuals who have done what you're looking to do or who are currently doing what you're trying to achieve. So you can take that information, apply it, utilize it, and see a meaningful difference in your business and your life. Happy Thursday, everybody. I got a very special guest for you guys here today, and we're going to break down pretty in depth the topic that is on top of everybody's mind, that it has been on top of everybody's mind. But frankly, what can you do about it? I think that's the thing that I think is lacking the most out there is everybody knows fraud's a bad thing, but like, how do you spot this stuff? But like, most importantly, what can you do about it? How can you protect your business? And I have the double broker bounty hunter himself, John, with Freight Fraud Task Force, on the show today. John, thank you so much for taking the time to join us.
Oh, it's a pleasure to be here, Chris. Thank you for the invite.
No, I'm looking forward to talking about this, man. I mean, just chatting with you backstage before we started. I mean, you're clearly very passionate about this stuff. And, you know, I think, you know, one of the things that stood out the most for what you were saying there is how back in the day for me, when double brokering and stuff would happen, it would only be like a blatant slight skim off the top but like, that's kind of where it would end. And now it's seemingly there's like just fraud farms out there across the world, and they've infiltrated our supply chain, and it's beyond acceptable at this point. And it's seemingly getting worse. It's seemingly becoming more and more rampant.
Oh, rampant doesn't even begin to describe it. And the way you started off describing it, the nickel and diming off the top is exactly right. And that was really the initial, how do I put this, invasion of the scam as it goes on. And when we talk about a lot of the freight fraud, we automatically jump to the Eastern European syndicates, the Mexican cartels, mafia, the organized crime elements that are out there. And they are a huge part of it. And that is what really brought all of this to light. You know, I would save a discussion for another day of the trucker who's just down on his luck looking to make a few extra bucks.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. And there's a lot of, you know, from my perspective, there is so much complexity to where things are now. Like, it is not the days of where it used to be. And it's way more organized than I think a lot of people even think, right? And I think that's what stops a lot of organizations from making any progress to thwart any of that stuff internally is they fail to realize how organized this is, and how easy it is for people now to duplicate and replicate themselves out there, to where it's like they're essentially ghost carriers. They're just behind the scenes.
You pretty much called it dead on. These guys, they're well organized. They're well funded. I would dare state that there's probably an element of state funding involved when it comes to a lot of the international actors. It's been an invasion into the U.S. transportation industry, and that invasion has turned into a cancer that has then begun to permeate, because you have all of these bad actors who are committing double brokering, which then expands into other forms of fraud like cargo theft, and there's almost no consequence. Mm-hmm. So now you have domestic guys who are becoming opportunists, who then see that, well, if this guy in Moldova can get away with it, why can't I? Yeah. And now you have what essentially has been a lame duck federal agency out of Department of Transportation and the FMCSA, who have not really done anything about it until just recently, and it's grown to a point where, frankly, fraud is going to be part of our everyday life, and that's something we have to accept at this point. It's not about necessarily eradicating freight fraud, which is the task force's mission, but it's more about controlling it, managing it, mitigating it through education, best practices, helping others to see where the gaps are in their own prevention methods, and help them to shore that up. The problem is you have 600 new carriers coming into this industry every week. That's 600 new carriers that can be swindled in a heartbeat by scammers because these guys don't know any better due to the low barriers of entry into the industry. And it's not just carriers, brokers too. You know, how many of the 3-letter brokers are out there hiring these college students who know nothing about the freight industry, and they become unwitting pawns in a lot of the drama that's going on. Education is the only thing that's going to help to curb this, and that's all we're going to be able to do is curb it. Let's be real.
No, I agree with that. So let's talk about the Freight Fraud Task Force. How did this come to light? Who's behind this? What is your guys' main mission with this?
Well, the Freight Fraud Task Force was created a year ago. It's originally the brainchild of Jeff Dickinson, who is our chairman, and Dale Prax, who's our senior advisor. Many people know Dale Prax with Freight Validate and also with Truck Stop. Yep. They were the originals. They brought me in shortly after, trying to come up with options on how to detect the double brokering, and we started assembling a group of fraud fighters. We also have oh geez, now I'm starting to draw blanks on the rest of the people on the board. We have Claudia Catlett, who is our secretary. We have Tommy Rook as our treasurer. Tommy Rook's big in the insurance side, and he's had his own educational foundation dealing with insurance and has married fraud into that fight. We just have a lot of people who have been very active in the fraud prevention arena, particularly on LinkedIn and whatnot. That's kind of what all gelled us together. And our entire purpose is to try to eliminate freight fraud through 3 standard pillars: education, best practices, and audits. And our website literally just launched yesterday. So we're finally starting to get our public face forward. We have 2 podcasts that we do. I do a daily show called the Task Force Minute, literally a 2-3 minute blurb about something that's happening in the last 24 hours dealing with fraud. And we have our weekly show, an hour-long show called the TikTok Diner, which funnily enough is going to be right after this. So thanks for the plug. And we're going to be sitting down talking with other people across the fraud prevention spectrum. For example, and it's not just brokers and carriers. And they think that that's what this is all about. It's not. You have to get the factoring companies. You have to get the insurance guys. You have to get collections people involved. There are a lot of different facets that really go to this, and we need everybody pulling in the same direction in order to try to get this done, in order to try to really put a dent into the fraud that exists out there. Because everyone right now, if you look at all the brokers, they all have their own different programs that they've put together. It's a hodgepodge, but that's where all the chinks are. And these scammers know that, and they want us to stay as segmented as possible in order for them to pull off what they do.
How do you think it got to this point? Like, I try and think, obviously there's a cause and effect for everything. And do you think that post-COVID freight rates, and that we'll call it a gold rush at that time, completely opened the doors for this to exponentially increase? Because I'm not naive to think that, oh, this just happened. This stuff's been going on for a very, very long time. But I think that from my perspective, there's been an absolute increase of it, because at the end of the day, all one person needs to see is that window of what you were talking about earlier. And I talk about this all the time. There's no fear of repercussion. I mean, if you just look at most crime across the United States right now, there is very little repercussions for your actions out there. So this might become as a surprise to some people, but ironically, that attracts more of it when people know that they're not going to get caught. Or if they do get caught, it's going to be a slap on the wrist, and there's going to be no actual standards for that. So it's like, from your perspective, how has this amplified over these last couple of years?
Well, it's been going on for, frankly, decades. It has never been a situation where carriers weren't passing loads to other carriers. In fact, there was a term for it in the past. For those who are fairly new to the industry, it was called interlining. And that was a practice that was made illegal in 2012 under MAP 21. So prior to, 2012. So prior to 2012, it was common practice and it was legal to do what everyone's calling double brokering today. Well, one form of double brokering. And it took a while for the process of MAP 21 to get into everyone's brain, and because everyone's been doing it for so long, one carrier hauls it from Jacksonville, Florida to New Orleans. One picks it up in New Orleans to El Paso, another one from El Paso to LA, and it was so commonplace. Well, now that you can't do that anymore, and everyone's trying to get away from that. Well, so you have a little bit of a fog of war type situation, a term we use in the military, a fog of war situation going on where there's a lot of confusion in the regulation. And that really didn't foment into what we are calling freight fraud today until you hit COVID. COVID is, again, what opened the door. A lot of people were getting laid off during COVID. People were looking for a way to try to survive. One of the only things that was happening, trucks were still moving. So people started getting trucks. I mean, myself, I got into the box truck business just before COVID. And COVID was really good for final mile residential delivery. So that was a great thing back then. And then post-COVID, we have the huge spike. Now, as you pointed out, the gold rush hits. So you have everyone who's never been in trucking before gets into trucking because there's money to be made. Well, low barriers to entry and a sleeping FMCSA who's just doling out the authorities like dollar bills at a strip club, and it's just gotten completely off the rails. It all started very slow, very small. The bad actors who were in there were doing very small scale scams. They had legitimate authorities. They had legitimate brokerages. They were booking loads with legitimate carriers, then handing that load off to the guy sitting next to them in the brokerage and skimming $300, $400, $500 off the top. And they were making a decent living doing that. Well, what we started doing, I was dispatching by that time. And the carriers that I was dispatching for, we all started seeing the pattern, and we knew who was double brokering the loads. Motor Freight, Jacksonville Freight Services, AGD Logistics. We saw who the brokers were that were doing this, and we made the decision, you know what? The only way to stop these guys from cheating carriers is to take them out of the game. The only way to take them out is to hit them in the pocketbook. So that's what we did. We intentionally booked their loads. And once we had the cargo in the truck, we could see who the real broker was. And we contacted the real broker, let them know what was going on. They're angry as hell that their load got double brokered, and they would pay us the full rate for the load. So the $500-$600 these bad guys are trying to skim, we now collected. Well, that extra money we called the bounty. And me being the dispatcher, I was the bounty hunter. And in 2021, actually middle 2021 to middle 2022, we made an extra $120,000 among 6 box trucks doing that. Some people called me a reverse scammer doing that, but all we're doing is we're trying to shut down the bad actors and hit them where it counts in the wallet, and it worked. Of course, then by the end of 2022, they evolved to stop just skimming off the top and started stealing the entire freight bill. And it's just gotten worse from there. You're absolutely right.
What are organizations missing with this, right? Because it's like, I've been doing this for a very long time. I know that at some points, like, you can check all the boxes and like bad things are going to happen to you no matter what, right? Like, you can follow those processes. Do you think most organizations don't have a process? They're just like, what's your rate? You look all right based off of the safer website, or, again, and I'm not knocking any vetting software that's out there. There's a lot of great products, but I feel like at times people, they pay too much attention to the rate. And then especially when you're in a market where margins are as compressed as they are, and it's competitive as they are out there, sometimes they only book a truck based off of price, but like, they're not actually holding themselves to any standards in the booking process. From your perspective, why do you think that this is such a an allowable thing because it's seemingly not improving out there.
Well, I'll call it apathy. Apathy across the industry. Those who are active in trying to deal with the situation, we know what the issues are. We know what the latest scams are. We've seen the trends develop, and whether or not they're paying attention is a huge question mark. And it's not just carriers, but brokers too. How many times have we seen these fake loads pop up on DAT? That are paying twice the normal lane rate and whatnot, and everyone who's been in the industry for a while knows, oh, that's a scam load. Don't even bother touching that. But new guys coming in, they snatch that stuff up in half a heartbeat, thinking, oh, I hit the gold mine. I'm going to be able to pay my insurance early this month. Yeah. They don't know until they get burned, and the same thing happens at brokerages. You have these new kids coming out of college being hired as carrier sales guys, and they don't realize what's happening until they get burned. And it's really what gave rise to what we're all calling the compliance department. The compliance department really didn't exist prior to 2020. For the most part, it was only created because of double brokering and the fraud that was out there. And it wasn't necessarily staffed with career brokers, people who understood the industry. It was staffed with risk managers and attorneys who took these crazy steps to think, oh, well, we're going to defend ourselves because we're going to require the carrier to have at least a year of authority. We're going to require them to have a minimum number of roadside inspections and whatnot. Some of these steps sound good in theory, but in practice, it causes a certain capacity crunch. Now, I do a lot of consulting work currently. And one of the people that I'm dealing with right now, they know that their freight gets double brokered, and they allow it to happen because they can't find capacity otherwise. As long as the cargo gets to where it's going, they permit it on an occasional basis. And I'm trying to sit there and say, no, you can't. You just can't. If you allow it to happen, then it how much further are you willing to go to make sure you have capacity to move freight? I get it. Freight has to move. I get it. We have to get stuff from point A to point B, and people are afraid of losing their customers. But the more we let it happen, the worse the problem is going to get.
That is just a direct path to bankruptcy, because if they know about it, it's very well documented internally, and any of their insurance providers or defense, like somebody is going to pick that out. I hope this doesn't happen, but like in the event it does, that's a fast track to bankruptcy. They're knowingly allowing that stuff to happen. And, it's like from my perspective, I personally think that there are a lot of companies out there who, for seemingly whatever reason, forgot what a tight market looks like, John. And we're about to embark upon that. Like, it's crazy to me, the amount of people that I see who are that are brokers that are like, oh, we need a market shift. We need a market shift. But it's naturally going to progress to a carrier's market next. And I already saw all the posts around the holidays. Everybody bitching and moaning that, oh, how do these drivers justify quoting this? It's like, welcome to the fucking show, man. Like, that's exactly how this next market is going to look. And I think that all of these, I'm going to use the word standards in air quotes, all of these standards from a compliance standpoint that a lot of these brokers have instituted over these last couple of years are going to go away when that happens, because it will be widespread panic on how are we going to cover this truck? There's no trucks out there. We can't have all these requirements anymore. They're going to internally make a decision to go away. And when that happens, John, that's going to open up a whole other wave of fraud and double brokering all over again. And brokers are never going to be able to drop the hammer at the levels that they've been operating on as soon as they let up, because every carrier out there is going to be like, well, fuck you. If I don't have to do this, like, why didn't I have to do it last year? I'm not doing that again. And it's like, again, I had my guest on the show this week, multi-generation trucking company owner out there. Like, they're the ones who are getting screwed the most. The legitimate operators are the ones getting screwed the most right now for the amount of hoops that they have to jump through just to prove that they're valid.
Oh, absolutely. We've seen year-over-year insurance rates going up 20% plus for people who have never had a claim. carriers are already operating off a shoestring budget if they're even operating in the black. Yeah. So we're seeing a huge wave of large carriers going under. There were 5 of them that went under between December 15th and Christmas.
Yeah.
This is huge that we've heard about. Exactly. The capacity crunch is coming. So you have carriers and brokers, because let's face it, you have by percentage more brokers going under than carriers at this point.
And I want to put just something out here quick. I want to interject. Freightway has actually released a really solid article about that this week. It could have been just released yesterday, but they were breaking down brokers' margins and everything compared to their expenses. And I think every broker out there needs to read that, because it does give a cost breakdown on a per load basis. But I think that is the mass exodus that is actually about to happen, John, is brokers. I think there's going to be a mass exodus of brokers here in the next 12 to 24 months. I honestly think most carriers at this point that are legitimately operating, I'm not going to go as far as saying that they're in the clear, because I don't know their internal finances. I think that they are going to have a very prosperous next 24 months, especially if they are operating in a legal and ethical manner, because I truly think that the mass exodus that is going to happen is it's going to come on the brokerage side here.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think the carrier purge it has for the most part begun to abate on an economic standpoint. We are still going to see continued capacity reductions by FMCSA's actions, whether it dealing with the non-domicile CDLs, ELP, trying to eliminate the bad actors in the CDL mills. Yeah. And possibly even revoking CDLs from people who got their CDLs from those different locations until they recertify. There's a lot of discussion on how to deal with those kinds of situations. And in dealing with that, you're going to see a stronger capacity crunch take place that brokers and shippers just are not prepared for. And when the shippers start seeing the sticker shock that they're about to get, brokers are going to start shopping around for new brokers, and brokers are going to have a hard time trying to survive the next 12 months. I agree. Brokers are about to take a big hit, but I think currently they're taking, by percentage of authorities that are out there, brokers are taking a bigger hit right now than the carriers are, and that will continue to be the trend for the next 12 months.
I personally, because I've talked about the non-domiciled stuff a lot on this show, and if we the data is the data, right? And I think that there's a lot of talking heads on social media right now that are more spouting off about it because it's going to get them clicks. But there is no actual crash data that links non-domiciled CDL drivers to a higher percentage of the crashes out there, because it's just a blanket data source. So a lot of that stuff that you see out there, a lot of the posts are just blatantly false. But where my stance is I think we're at a point, and again, the current FMCSA DOT, they inherited this mess, right? So everything that I say about it, I'm not blaming them for it, but historically, the FMCSA and the DOT historically, up until this current administration, were seemingly looking in the other direction with a lot of stuff. I look at it as, and this is my call to the DOT and Secretary Duffy and everything is they need to make every active CDL holder recertify in some capacity right now to eliminate bias, to eliminate any political bias talking heads from coming out there and saying you're targeting anything. It's got to go as far as listen, if it's an ELP thing, every driver needs to prove their ability to read and speak English. And then you do something like that, I think that it sets a very standard across the board where it minimizes any potential backlash, because it's hey, listen, if you have it, and I'm not saying that this is going to be fun or easy or if it's even warranted out there, but with where things are, to prove that you're valid. And then I would go as far as saying that the FMCSA does some form of check mark. I mean, they have access to all of our data. Put something inside of the FMCSA database that says this carrier is X certified for whatever. And then I think the carriers who do that and jump through that hoop are going to actually be able to charge more money out there and make more money. And it removes any and all of that stuff. But then again, it will put a giant bullseye on all the fraudulent carriers, because when it boils down to it, fraud is fraud no matter what. If you're breaking the rules and you're doing that and you're sidestepping this stuff, you are putting legitimate business owners out. You are putting legitimate, hardworking men and women out of business by you doing that. Because again, I'm just a firm believer. I don't have any proof of this, but if you side skirt one law, you're doing it fucking all over the place. And I just look at it as, do I want this to happen? No, but if the feds kicked down my door right now and said, Chris, you got to prove you're a legitimate business. Where's your business license? Where's your insurance? Where's all of that stuff? I have it all in a folder. I can prove the validity of my business in about 8 seconds. I just look at it as, if you really want to fight that, people should be advocating for that level of scrutiny to happen so we can get this over with, because otherwise this is going to be a drug out process. And it's only a matter of time. Unfortunately, if fraud increases, if double brokering increases, it's only a matter of time before that carrier who is on to down to their last dollar, that needs that additional $1,000 above market load that they just unknowingly accepted from a fraudulent carrier. It's only a matter of time before they accept it, they don't get paid, and then they go under.
Oh, absolutely. And I think the Fed is actually doing a fantastic job over the last 6 months in how they're trying to address the issue. Now, they've been handicapped. This administration handicapped itself with Doge. Doge went through and sliced the hell out of FMCSA. And their investigative team has been cut by more than 50%. It's been horrible being a civil servant in this country lately. However, the tide has finally turned. I think with Administrator Bars now taking over the FMCSA back in October, for the first time, we have an FMCSA administrator who has actually been part of the industry for his career. He's a career DOT officer out of the state of Florida. He knows the rules. He knows the regulations. He knows the issues that exist in the industry. So for the first time, we have an ally sitting in the political chair that runs everything, who can actually start pushing regulation and rules through that actually make sense to help fix this industry. And frankly, FMCSA is handicapped in what they're capable of doing because they're limited to the laws that exist. So the only thing they can really do is they can only shore up the front door. They can shore up the registration process. They can shore up the recertifications, but that's all they can do. For the scammers that already are in the system or are using impersonation attacks to infiltrate the system, it's up to the industry to actually deal with those guys. And that is where the Freight Fraud Task Force steps in.
Yeah. And from my perspective, that's why, everything that you're talking about right there, skirting the legal system, all the lawsuits that are going to be filed. That's why I think like they have to do an overarching recertification across the board, because then nobody can say that anybody's being targeted unfairly. Right. And I think that's the way that I would like to see that go. Again, I'm not a fucking attorney. I could be completely off base, but I'm looking at it from if somebody's going to go out there and challenge it, because that's the political bias that was thrown out right away, is they're like, oh, you're only attacking that driver or that driver. No, actually, we're going to make all drivers do it. And again, I understand it would be annoying. It would be time consuming and everything else. But the faster we do this, I think the faster we can start making that turn in the right direction. But John, I appreciate your time, man. You're clearly very passionate about this. I'm gonna love to have you and your team back on the show here in the future, because I love people who are in the trenches, who are doing the work and have done the work, that are out there trying to fight this stuff. But how does anybody reach out to you to find out more about what you guys got going on?
Well, you can always follow us on LinkedIn, Freight Fraud Task Force, Inc. We also just launched our website, which is freightfraudtaskforce.com. Please go ahead and check it out. We are looking at starting to take memberships for the task force probably within the next couple of months. One of the things we want to do, we want to make sure the information that we provide isn't entirely public. Yeah. General tips, general concepts, we definitely want to make public. We want to make people aware. But when it comes to specific, this is how you do this step by step, we don't want that out in the public, because if that's out in the public, the scammers get their hands on it. They get their hands on it, they change their tactics, and then we're right back to square one, and then we have to develop new tactics to counter what the latest scam is. Everything is going to be shielded inside the Freight Fraud Task Force for the information that we provide. But definitely go to our website, check us out. We also have our own show coming up here after this.
Yeah, do it. Hit it up. John, thank you so much for your time. That's going to be it for today, ladies and gentlemen. If you guys can't find John or the Freight Fraud Task Force out there, you guys hit me up. I'll gladly put you guys in contact with them. They're clearly doing a lot of good things. I know a lot of those people over there, they love this industry, and they're going to do right by you guys. But that is going to be it. As always, if you got value in what you heard and you're not subscribed, subscribe to the show, you guys. And if you're feeling ambitious, rank it on iTunes and Spotify, because if you see value, your network's going to see it as well. I appreciate you guys. I love you guys, and we'll be talking to you soon.
bank. Window down, yelling out money, anything. Ayy, ooh, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when I'm get to the back. Ayy, got the foot on the gas. Pedal to the metal when the